Hey guys, this is Skip Banther with Tar Heel Parts, and today we're going to talk about setup wheels. They're also called polishing wheels. Some people call them contact wheels, although I consider a contact wheel something that a belt runs around. So basically what a setup wheel or a polishing wheel is it's a wheel, buffing wheel like that, in which glue is brushed on the outer edge. It's rolled in grit to give it an abrasive face. These are new ones right here. And this is a used one, a well-used one or whatever. This one happens to be 180 grit. It's one that I was using. It did have 80 grit Turkish emery on it, and now I just changed it to 180. But that's what it looks like on the edge. And they do have a rotation in which they spin, because if you push your hand against the edge, one way feels like snake skin, you know, like scales or whatever, in which these basically are small platelets of grit. It's very flexible. Let's see if I can get you. Well, I can feel that, but you can see it flexing right there. So it will contour a little bit, and you can make them hard. You can make them softer. You can do a lot of different things with them. But basically, it's for metal removal or shaping, some things like that. Contact wheel construction. Basically, they can be like this wheel right here, which this is a pretty firm one. This is 1/4 inch stitched, and it has canvas covers on it. It's about 5 layers of 20 ply material. It's 60-60 material, and the canvas covers are on top of that. And then it has a nice napped face to brush the glue into, and then the napped face will hold the glue pretty well. Initially, when you set up a wheel, you'll brush glue into it, and then let that dry. Then you would come along and fracture it. A fractured wheel looks like this one right here. Okay, that's a freshly fractured wheel. It's also hadn't been run a lot because the fractures or the platelets on there are pretty large as compared to this one that's run. And see, they're quite a bit smaller than that right there. So you would fracture that glue. You'd brush the head of glue into it, let it dry, and then fracture it. That kind of breaks up the platelets in the very beginning. Then you'd brush another head of glue into it. Then roll it in grit and crack it again. And that basically is where this one is. This wheel's only been run a handful of times, 3 or 4 times, something like that. So it's not broken in quite right as of yet. And then it's ready to go. And before it gets to this, these small platelets like this, this wheel may have been set up anywhere between 5 and 10 times before it gets to this this condition here with the small plates. Setup wheels, contact wheels, can be made out of anything. They can be wide, they can be small. This happens to be a 5-inch one. This one has canvas covers on it. This one does not. This one has 3/8 stitched buffs in it. This one has 1/4 inch stitched buffs in it. The 3/8 makes it a little bit softer, not much, but some. They can be made thin, like this one right here. Here again, it's a pretty firm buff. Then this buff, this contact wheel, made out of denim. It's 3/8 inch spiral sewn with canvas covers on it again. It is flexible. In other words, you can actually bend this sucker a little bit. Most of them are not that way. So this one would be used for, you know, highly contoured parts or surfaces, that type of thing. Then other ones, this is one from Matchless. They're going out of business now, but this is a real hard one. This one's made out of blue jean material, and I really don't get a kick out of it because the weave of the material is too coarse, and therefore when it's raked or set up, you'll have little bumps in it. Now, it wouldn't make much difference after it'd been set up 4 or 5 times, but in the beginning it would have hard spots in it, and where those hard spots were or bumps in it, the grit would wear off faster, and thus you would get down to the cotton. Now, I mentioned that these things are, you know, and they can be made any size, any shape, any form, any width or whatever. And to give you an idea for different widths, here's a couple of wheels. These babies are like 5 inches thick. I think this one's 6. What's on here is actually greaseless abrasive. It's glue and grit mixed together, and that composition comes to us in a plastic sleeve. You would apply the greaseless abrasive to the wheel while it's spinning, then let it dry, and you don't need to crack this one or anything because it's going to wear off fairly quick anyway. And let it dry, and then it's ready to go. You can see over here where the wheel is not used as much, and it's starting to actually perform like a true setup wheel or whatever. That's very, very rare for that to happen, but it's happening in this case right here. I'm gonna set those off to one side. Now the wheels, I told you about the nap right here. This is a short nap. This will make a very flat surface, unlike a wheel, something like this right here, in which the grit's actually coming off of it. It'll be a little bit more pliable. I may have just contradicted myself, but I think you get the idea. This is a real flexible wheel. You can see it just bend and go crazy. So I made it up this way just to for a different application, different scenarios. But these are softer wheels. They have a thicker nap on the edge versus the nap is very short here. It's tight. It's not very deep. This will leave a flatter surface than this one will. This is mainly what chrome plating shops used to use a long time ago, bumper shops, things like that, because it gave you a little bit of a softer face. Let's see, and I don't have one like that. Oh yes, here's one. No, I don't have one like that made up to show you. But you can see here, these wheels have actually been set up. They've been run like this one right here. And they were run too far, and you actually got into the grit when they were running them. In other words, like this right here. Here's setup wheels. These are all 60 and 80 grit. This one right here, you can see it's down to the cotton. When that happens and you put grease on there, the grease gets in the cotton, and therefore it does not hold the grit as well. You can see that happening right here also. So you want to stop running these wheels before they get down to the cotton. You don't want the grease to run in there. Also, if there's no grease that got in there, you weren't running grease on the wheel. If there's no grease right here, then it would leave kind of a rough spot in the wheel. It would get out around, some things like that. See, this wheel is going too far. It needs to be reset. So when it gets to this condition right here, you'll actually rake the entire head off of it like this and start over. In order to set up a nap, something like that, a short nap, you might use 36 grit sandpaper, whereas a rake was used right here to get that. Of course, you'll use something else like the corner of a piece of sheet metal or something to strip the entire head off, so that if you were to try to use a rake on a head like that, it would just wear the rake down to nothing. Now, a wheel, these wheels right here aren't quite broken in yet. You can see that they're pretty rough. Whereas the more they get broken in, the smoother they get on the edge. And here again, this one's been run a little bit too much. The edge is going on this one, needs to be torn off. They perform great when they're like this. It may feel awful slick here, but this is actually 80 grit. Whereas this is 80 grit on a more flexible wheel. I showed this to you just a minute ago. And that's just raw 80 grit. Bear in mind that even though there might be glumps on here, like on the side of this thing right over here, or big glumps up here, the glumps are made out of 80 grit, so it will sand just the same as that one right there, or the same as this. It's just that they last longer when they get to this point. This is in the very beginning, not broken in. This is broken in over here. Those are 80 grits. Here's some 120s. Here again, this one's starting to get there. There's a wheel. Oh, I didn't realize I had that one. But anyway, this is a wheel in which it never has been run. It was raked. It actually is one of these wheels right here. It's a real short nap. It's a hard wheel, and a layer of glue has been brushed into it to give it a foundation. Then it was cracked, and then another brush head of glue was run into it, and then cracked. And here we go. That's what it looks like with it just being freshly cracked. You can see some spots on here in which the crack is not totally complete, but it will crack up more and more as we go. These are 180 wheels. The plates are a little bit bigger there. The bigger the plate, the newer the wheel is, the smaller the plate, little plates or whatever, the longer that wheel has been around, the more it's been run. Here's an example also of some wheels that I need is flexibility. These things bend, and if you listen close, you hear it crack. That's the grit cracking. And the glue is actually, in this case, on all these wheels right here, a water-based glue versus an animal hide glue, in which you buy the pellets of animal hide glue, mix it up in water, put it on a hot plate, heat them up, brush it into the wheel, the face of the wheel, then roll it in grit. That works great for heavier grits, but the finer grits I like to run the liquid-based latex type glues, in which they're water-based. You brush the glue into the wheel, let it dry, and then you can actually take a hammer and come along and fracture it, and that's what gives it all these small cracks and things like that. The more obviously the more the fractures, the softer and more pliable the wheel's going to be. By the way, on the water-based glues, the higher the humidity that day, the slower they dry. The crack doesn't sound like a nice eggshell sound when you crack it, and that's what you want to achieve. So if you have trouble with that, you might wind up putting the wheels in a hot box. Sometimes you can use your wife's oven if she'll let you. Put the oven on warm, let them cook for 3 or 4 hours. Try not to set them on fire. And I'm saying use common sense when you get there. If it burns your house down, that's your problem. Don't come back at me. Here is another buff. This one just was used and raked out. You can see long strings in it. No big deal. When you brush the glue into it, that'll all go back into it. By the way, when you brush the glue into the wheel, there's always a direction on these contact wheels, and you always want to run that wheel in that direction. So when it's raked, also the fibers, in this case, since it's running in this direction, it's spinning like this. The fibers will all be back like this. You don't want to brush it so the fibers are standing out this way. You want them laid back like that, so that as this runs on the buffer against the metal, those fibers don't tend to want to stand up, strip the grit off, and then turn right around and lay back. So you'll brush this in one direction, always backwards. You may brush it initially, putting the initial head of glue on it, back and forth to get it in there really good. Get a good foundation, a good initial glue head on the wheel. And then afterwards, once you get the glue head and such like that, you always brush it with the rotation. Let's see here. What else can I tell you about these guys? When you make a contact wheel, if you want to make your own wheels, you can start off by, and I didn't have this really planned that well, but we'll get to it and talk about it here. Basically, here are 5 wheels. These are 20 ply, 1/4 inch stitched, 60/60 material, and maybe it's only 4. It's only 4 in this wheel right here to make an inch. So you can see that this is a little bit thicker right here. And once they're glued and pressed, then it'll be nice and tight like that. So in order to make this wheel, you would start off with these buffs right here. You would look at where the stitch is on these things. And so the stitch ends right here. Comes over here like that. You can see where that stitch is. And on this one, the stitch ends right here. And you can see the stitch it comes outward right here. And so that's the way in which it would rotate. So this buff would rotate in that direction right there. When you stack up a bunch of them like that, there's where the stitch ends on that one. Here's where the stitch ends on this one. You would basically stagger those. So in this case, since you've got 4 of them, I would start like that. This one's here. This is 90 degrees over here. The next one would be in right here, and the last one would be over here. So all the stitches are staggered on that buff to make it. So you would take these wheels, and with the water-based glue, and I like to thin out my water-based glue just a little bit when I'm gluing buffs together, with glue here and glue here, and you put it on there, and they stick together. So the more water, the thinner it is, the more it's going to go into the cotton, and the better it's going to stay together. So you brush glue here and here, put those guys together, brush glue here and here, put those guys together here and here, and then you're ready to go. You don't necessarily have to put these canvas covers on there. They look nice, not necessary. And then you would take this over to the press, and you would stick it in the press and clamp it down and let it stay overnight, and then it becomes a nice tight wheel like this, and like this guy right here. And then you've got the makings of a setup wheel. So this would become that right there. Then once you got it, sometimes the buffs are uneven. This is greatly exaggerated, but sometimes they're uneven. Something like that, and you would basically rake it flat. And that's the face that you would get right here, and also right here. And that's what you've got. You've got to rake it true, because you want to make sure these guys are round. And there you go. That's a good bit of information there. I hope you understood. If you have any questions, give me a call at Tar Heel Parts. This is Skip, and our number is 1-800-322-1957. Thanks.